Food is the most fundamental aspect of life, yet we rarely give it any thought. As the world has developed and become more advanced, food has remained imperative to human life.
If food is such an essential part of life, why is it that some parts of the world have more food than others? This is Yali's question, a citizen of New Guinea. While this may appear like a simple question, it has a complicated answer.
Yali's question, we have to go back to the beginning of food production. The first production of food is traced back to the Neolithic Revolution. Before the Neolithic Revolution, people accessed food through a hunting and gathering system.
Farming began in the Fertile Crescent in modern-day Iraq. It started in the Fertile Crescent because it was home to the first settlements, which came hand in hand with farming. The oldest example of the first settlements is Chateauyouk. Chateauyouk was a thriving city located in the Fertile Crescent. However, eventually conditions in the Fertile Crescent became too dry and was depleted of nutrients, so people
There were major developments in government and cities in ancient Mesopotamia because there was population growth and there was a higher demand for food and order. Here are some of the major inventions of ancient Mesopotamia. One of the most influential inventions
aspect of food distribution across the globe. In fact, in some ways, it is the very foundation of why food and wealth is distributed the way it is today. Being on an east-west axis facilitates travel because at any point at the same latitude, there is the same amount of daylight and roughly the same climate and temperature. Also, you are able to have the same plants and wildlife, so if you need to find some type of plant or wildlife, it would be easier to find. Being on a north to south axis makes it more difficult to move and transport because there are different climates and varying daylight hours. This is because some regions are closer to the equator than others. Also, you have different types of wildlife and plants because of climate variation. Therefore, it will be harder to distribute food and have a surplus of food in north to south axis rather than an east-west axis. A great example of this would be Africa versus Europe. Africa is on a north to south axis, while on the other hand, Europe is on.
Geographic luck impacted food because the environment controls what type of farming can be done, what kind of food can be grown, and the types of animals that can be raised. For example, New Guinea is located in a climate zone that doesn't support crops that are easy to grow. Because they were putting too much time and effort into growing and storing their food, they never had a chance to develop technologies that other countries did. But on the other hand, Europe has a better climate and more domesticable animals, so they have time to specialize and work on innovations and improvements on their society and increase their population. For example, there are 14 domesticable animals, and of the 14, 13 are native to either Europe or Asia. The 13 include cattle, bison, sheep, pig, goats, horses, camels, alpacas, water buffalo, reindeer, yaks, and donkeys. The only animal that was not native to Europe or Asia was the llama, which was native to South America. This proves that Jared Diamond's theory is correct, that some countries are wealthier than others because of the environment they have and not because of biological reasons. Local food inequality is when not everyone in the community or in the state has access to fresh, healthy produce. This is because our government has skewed the pricing system so that it supports processed conventional food rather than fresh, healthy produce. The result is that only people who are well off can buy fresh produce, and people who cannot afford it are limited to processed unhealthy foods. Also, it is cheaper to mass produce certain products in conventional manners for less money compared to more expensive sustainable farming. Clearly, we can't change the fact that some people have larger incomes than others, but we can change what foods are available and the cost for them. How we can start to improve this is by voting with our forks. What that means is that we can choose to support specific systems just by buying those foods. For example, by working through programs like Farm Fresh RI, CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, and farmers markets, we can create more demand for fresh local food, which will most likely decrease the price and therefore help solve local food inequality. There are 845 million people today who are hungry. As a community, we can start solving food inequality around the world by changing our farming practices and making healthy foods more affordable for people who can't really buy them. If we start supporting local and sustainable farms, there will be more demand for healthy fresh food, and in turn it will be easier to access fresh food because when it becomes more available, the cost will go down. We could also start to pay attention to what we eat by reading labels and seeing where our food comes from and that we are putting healthy foods into our bodies. Then we can decrease the demand for industrial conventional meals, which in turn helps local and sustainable farmers. Changing our farming practices can solve a lot of problems, like type 2 diabetes and heart diseases that are caused by the lack of healthy foods in our bodies.